Welcome to this extraordinary meeting of Subject Overview and Scrutiny Committee 3, which has been convened as a hybrid meeting. The meeting has been recorded and will be available via the Council's website to be viewed subsequently. Everyone participating in the meeting will be accessing it either from the Council Chamber, Civic Offices Bridgend, or from remote locations. Should I, as Chair, experience any technical difficulties during the meeting, Councillor Colin Davis will step in and take over temporarily as Chair in my absence. And in his absence, then Councillor Graham Walter will step in. Please can everyone ensure that mobile phones are switched off or to silent mode. Members will have received an electronic copy of the agenda, and I will ask the officers to present a brief summary of the key points. For the record, the agenda can be viewed on the Council's website. Officers and members are reminded to refer to the page numbers contained in the public version of the agenda report pack. Members and officers will be speaking at various points during the meeting, and those speaking may switch on their microphones at that point. But I would ask that, with the exception of myself as chairperson, at all other times you keep your microphone switched off, as this will help to minimise any background noise interference. However, I would invite members and officers to leave their cameras on for the duration of the meeting, as agreed in the recent full council meeting. Whether attending in the chamber or remotely, if any member and officer wish to raise a point or question, they should click the raise hand icon at the top of the right-hand side of the Microsoft Teams window, and I will come to you in the order I receive requests. If you are in the chamber, please switch on your microphone on your desk and speak directly into the mic to allow those who are remote to hear you clearly. Please lower your hand once you have finished speaking. The instant messaging chat button has been disabled for this meeting. Please do not use your microphone unless asked to do so. Officers from Scrutiny will be supporting the meeting and will be monitoring the use of microphones throughout its duration, and when necessary will mute those not being used. I will ask officers to introduce themselves when I invite them to speak during the course of the meeting. They too should ensure microphones are switched off when not in use. I will now proceed to the agenda. First, item 1, apologies for absence.
Thank you, Chair. I've received apologies for absence from Councillor Melanie Evans.
Are there any other apologies? There's no indications. Okay, move on to item 2. Declarations of interest. If any member has an interest to declare in any matter on the agenda, please click on the right-hand icon, raise hand icon, and I will come to you in turn for you to declare your interest. Councillor Jonathan Pratt, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Personal on agenda item 3 as a member of the Development Control Committee.
Thank you. Councillor Mark John, you're not in the committee, you don't need to...
Yeah, same as Jonathan Pratt. Thank you, Chair. Personal interest.
I don't think Councillor Pratt's not a member. Councillor John's not a member. No, you didn't need to do that, Councillor. It doesn't matter, it's okay. Councillor Nora Clark, please.
Thank you, Chair. As a member of Development Control Committee, I have sought advice from the legal officer, and in her view, there isn't a need for me to declare an interest. Obviously, if a matter of planning does come up, I will declare a personal interest at that time. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. Councillor William Kendall, please.
Declare a personal interest as a member of the Development Control Committee.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Mike Kern, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, personal interest as I am a member of the Development Control Committee.
Okay, thank you very much. No more declarations, I can see. Okay, we'll move on to item 3, call-in of Cabinet decision proposed use of land transaction transfer protocol with Cardiff Capital Region for land at Brynmenyn and Bryncethin. I will ask the Scrutiny Officer to introduce the report and the role of the Scrutiny Committee in calling in a decision. Meryl, please.
Thank you, Chair. So the purpose of this report is to enable the committee to consider the call-in of the decision of Cabinet on the 12th of March in relation to the report on the proposed use of land transaction transfer protocol with Cardiff Capital Region for land at Brynmenyn and Bryncethin. In accordance with section 7.23 of the Council's Constitution, a notice of call-in has been received from 3 scrutiny members and a scrutiny chair, requesting that the executive decision made by Cabinet on the 12th of March is called in. The related Cabinet decision record, notice of call-in and Cabinet report are appended to the report. The recommendation in paragraph 9 asks the committee to consider the report and to determine whether it wishes to either refer the decision back to Cabinet for reconsideration, setting out in writing the reasons, or decide not to refer the matter back to the Cabinet. So I'll hand back to you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Meryl. I will now ask members who supported the notice of call-in to briefly speak on the reasons why the decision has been called in, noting that the reasons are set out in the report Appendix B. Councillor, you could indicate that the three people who called it in, these are Councillor Favourite, so Councillor Ian Spiller and Councillor Tim Thomas. Councillor Williams, you didn't call it in, but you put your hand up.
Yeah, I called it in, Chair. So I was going to make a statement if that's okay.
Oh, sorry, it's on the top list. Sorry, I apologise. I didn't see that. Councillor Martin Williams, please.
Thank you, Chair. And I'll just outline the reasons this has been called in, and perhaps the reason it hasn't been called in first is this isn't about the merits or otherwise of hydrogen production, and it's not about planning per se. This is about the Cabinet's decision to use the mechanism that they are proposing to do to transfer the land from this authority to the CCRD and what that will become post-April. We don't feel, the signatories felt that there was proper consideration or questioning of the advice to use this mechanism. It was unclear how the land has been determined to be surplus. It was seemingly just declared as surplus without the process behind that being clear. We were unclear and slightly concerned as to whether it was a proper purpose that this land was being transferred to. So we would like to explore whether it is indeed an operational purpose that the land is being transferred for. There is some questions about what would happen after hydrogen production ceases in the event that it is started in the first place. We don't feel that the public interest has been properly taken into account in making this decision. There was no reference to the strong opposition to the location of this facility. So we don't feel that the public interest was properly addressed in making the decision. And there is concern that in the timing of these things, this land transfer decision has been made in advance of almost any regulatory approval, including, most importantly, the approval of any planning consent, which would come before this authority's Development Control Committee, or possibly even full council as its departure planning. And there is a concern that, given that the value of the land post-planning is worth £1 million, that there would be undue pressure placed upon councillors on the Development Control Committee to make a decision that would be favourable to this council receiving that receipt. So that's my summary, Chair.
Is there any other the non-committee members wish to speak? No? Councillor Ian Spiller, please, indicated.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'll follow on from what Councillor Martin Williams has succinctly summarised, but really raising the point that how can we actually be certain that this land is actually surplus? As Councillor Williams has put it, we haven't seen the background exploration of that. There was very limited or no questioning of that. And have all other uses been explored for that land? The Communities Director has on a number of occasions talked about the need for an alternative highways depot in that location. The land at Waterton, we're more than aware under many occasions, has been discussed, and the fact that it's now on a flood risk zone. So I'd like to really understand, Chair, that all other options have been explored before reaching this decision. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Spiller. Councillor Timothy Thomas, please.
Thank you, Chair. Can I just check? I'm in quite a rural location at the moment. I just want to check that you can hear me loud and clear.
I can hear you, but you're frozen on my screen, but you're absolutely clear.
Marvellous.
So carry on, yeah.
Thanks, Chair. Firstly, I just want to thank Councillor Williams for taking the lead in this call-in decision. And also, a lot of what I'm going to say is hand in glove with what was already been discussed, particularly in terms of the land use. And most of my concerns about this proposed development have chiefly been around the impact it could have on residential development. Let's not forget that it's within 50 metres of the nearest residential area at Davis Avenue in Bryn Cethyn. However, with regards to this particular call-in, I have had the opportunity to knock a few businesses' doors, particularly on Squires Drive. And that is where I think a lot of the impact is going to be felt the hardest in terms of commercial detriment. And as I said, I've knocked a few doors, and I think that is the very least the Cabinet could have done themselves in doing a little bit of scrutiny and a little bit of research themselves. And to my knowledge, I don't believe they've had much engagement with the local business community, although Councillor Williams did attend a meeting with one particular business. Now, from my brief door knocking with local businesses, I have learnt that this proposed development is going to be much to the detriment of current business ventures on Bryn Melyn Industrial Estate, in particular Squires Drive. Firstly, I think in context, let's not forget that this proposed development is only going to produce 5 jobs, and those 5 jobs are likely to be outside of the area as well. And businesses have basically told me that the lack.
You have to stick to the actual what's on the call in itself. What you don't.
Oh yeah, I do intend to. It's just context, Chair, but thank you. Businesses have told me that the lack of entry.
You can't bring any new reasons in at this point. I'm being advised by the legal.
No, I don't intend to.
Okay.
Businesses have told me the lack of entry and egress could jeopardise their businesses, and this could be to the detriment of their businesses. They've also said that.
Chair, if I may, you are actually bringing in new points, though, Councillor Thomas. Sorry.
To stick to what's in the actual call-in, Tim, I'm afraid. Councillor Thomas, I think we've lost Councillor Thomas. I think.
No, you haven't. I flicked on to silent mode then. But no, I believe I've stayed.
You made that point now. I think we I think we know where you're going with that point, but you've got to stick to the actual reasons in the call-in, Councillor Thomas. You're not allowed to.
Okay. But businesses have told me that this is going to be to the detriment, that the use of land is going to be to the detriment of their business. So really, I'm looking for a clear definition of what surplus land is.
Right, okay.
Has there been any independent valuations of the business land, of the said land? And has there been any inquiries from local businesses for any commercial expansion of that on that said land? Okay. That's all I'm going to say on this at the moment.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Thomas. Councillor Freya Bledsoe, please, in the chamber.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the opportunity for this call-in as well. We do appreciate it. I've signed it as the Chair of Scrutiny. It has to be signed off by a Chair, and I get asked to sign a number of call-ins, and some of them I'm not interested in signing. This one I am, because I've got a number of questions that I think were not answered sufficiently. They weren't even asked, let's be honest. So that's the reason for me signing this call-in. But I'm also going to remind you of our conversation earlier as well about who can talk and who cannot talk onto this matter, because I can see that we've got a number of our Cabinet members additional to the ones that are invitees, and I wouldn't want to think that there's any influence going on. Thank you.
Well, I can assure you, Councillor Bledsoe, that there are no influences going on. Anyone who's not a member of this committee is you're simply as an observer, and if they will not be called to speak at any point, as far as I'm aware. They may come into a point of clarification on something if there's some bizarre reason, but otherwise they're not. They're just observers, the same as the other observers up in the
yeah. Thank you. And
I forgot to welcome earlier.
I hope that hand gestures, etc., are not taken into account.
I haven't seen an hand gesture myself, but no.
Shaking of heads and things like that. Thank you, Chair.
You made the point. Thanks, Councillor Bledsoe. Thank you. Yeah.
To clarify one point is that you'll see that Councillor Spanswick isn't on the agenda as an invitee, but he is actually an invitee. It's just that we have to get the papers out and we hadn't clarified, sorry. So just to clarify that, sorry.
That is an error in the paperwork. John should have been on there, but he presumed it did. So he is actually an invitee. So what I call him, that he's not just an observer anyway. Okay. So there's no more people who supported the call-in to speak. So I will now ask the Cabinet members to outline the reasons for the decision in response to the reasons given in the notice of call-in, and then extend the invitation to the Corporate Director and other officers to also respond. So, who wants to go first? Sorry?
Chair, I'm happy to
Councillor Williams, yeah.
start off. Yes, thank you, Chair, and members of the of committee. I suppose if I can take you back to a previous cabinet report, actually, and that is the September 23 cabinet report, which called a halt to Bridgend County Borough Council's involvement with this project. And you will recall, I'm sure, Chair, because that decision was also a subject of a call-in, that the decision we took at that time was to seek possibly an alternative avenue to take this project forward. And members of the officers then, they've liaised with Welsh Government and with the Cardiff City region, and the report then that we have in front of you is the result of those deliberations, and the decision of officers was to use the protocol to transfer Bridgend County Borough Council owned land to the Cardiff City region. And I think that is the element, that is the purpose of the report, and that is what we've done. Now, we used this protocol because it keeps land in public ownership, and indeed that's best practice. It's in fact it's what Welsh Government advise us to do. If we have any surplus land, then we need to declare it, and I think the latest advice from Welsh Government is that we make that available to all public services. So that is the reason why we've used this mechanism. The idea of it being surplus, where we know that this land has been in Bridgend ownership for many years, and no use have come forward for it. The development costs for bringing this land into beneficial use far outweigh what we can achieve for it. We've got an opportunity at this time to transfer it to the Cardiff City region at an enhanced value. So I believe that is in the public interest to take advantage of that. And I'm not going to get involved in any of the development control processes here. That's not the point of this meeting. That is the point for another body. And in terms of return on the investment, then that now will also become a matter for the Cardiff City region. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Any other cabinet members like to speak? Or no? I'll bring in the officers then, please.
Yes,
Janine?
thank you, Chair. For the purposes of the recording, I'm Janine Nightingale, the Corporate Director of Communities. So, Chair, I've listened to some of the questions that have been raised this morning, and if I may, let me try and provide a little bit more narrative on some of them. What I think must be clear today is this is an option. It's a land option under the Land Transfer Transaction Protocol. That protocol is something that we use as normal business as usual. It's good practice in the council. The most recent example of where we've used this process from public sector to public sector was when we acquired the South Wales Police Station, the former police station at Cheapside. We acquired that, and that was then is being built upon by Bridgend College for a brand new town centre campus. And that was appropriate to use that protocol with a joint valuation, a joint red book district valuation. And that is exactly the same as what we are undertaking with this land, Chair. We've had, these are two areas of surplus land. I will come on to the reasons for that shortly. But what I want to explain is, as detailed in the Cabinet report, is this is an option agreement and it's heavily conditioned. It's heavily conditioned in for a number of reasons. It's conditioned that should that land not get a beneficial planning permission, then we would not want to transfer that land, and neither would the city deal, the Cardiff City region, or they're going to move to the CJC, a corporate joint committee in April. They wouldn't want the land unless planning is secured. So that's the first condition, that they have to have the first condition on that land. So as the option has that a beneficial planning permission must be in place. The second condition is that should they get that planning permission, that land can only be used for that permission, Chair. It can't be used for any other purpose, only for that permission. And that's so that we can safeguard what the land is being used for. The third thing is that the land must always stay in public ownership. So what we will be doing, if CCR decide they want to go ahead with the option, then one of the conditions is it stays in public ownership, and should the land not at any time be required for that, then it is offered back to the council, to BCBC, at the value at which it was purchased for, and not a penny more. So if we have an agreed valuation, and we haven't come upon that evaluation yet, Chair, but the valuation is circa £1 million, if we receive that £1 million from CCR, as is stated in the Cabinet report, we will hold that in a protected fund until such time as we're comfortable that development continues. There's another condition in there, Chair, that we need to be comfortable that the project can proceed. So number one, it needs a planning permission, as we discussed. But the second thing is that all of the finances and business case is in place to enable that project to proceed. And that's really important as well. So the CCR have a cabinet meeting when they become the corporate joint committee in June. And that's when that full business case for their investment in that project takes place. And they will be able to then say to us comfortably, they have the money to undertake this transaction. So that's a condition. And the final condition of this option agreement, only an option agreement at this stage, is that whoever we transfer this land to, this option, they must have the legal power to hold the land. And they will. They're a public body that will have the legal power. So the option agreement is heavily conditioned to protect the interests of Bridgend. And that's really important, to make sure the land stays in public ownership, to make sure that we won't transfer it unless that planning is in place, and that we know what use will go on that land, and that they can hold that land for us. So that's just, the decision that we made in that Cabinet report was to put together that option agreement subject to all of those things happening. Now, of course, on the 29th of April, we have a special Development Control Committee, that DC committee will determine on that day whether to grant planning permission for that land. Now, that determination will be on land use only. It will have no bearing on how much that land is worth, but it will just be is that an appropriate use of that land? The two areas of land, the clay pits for a solar array and the land at Bryn Menyn for that hydrogen production and storage facility. That is all they will be determining. They won't be determining the safety of the plant or any of those things, because that is subject to a whole different level of licenses and agreements from the Health and Safety Executive, Natural Resources Wales and others, and they are documented in the Cabinet report, Chair. There's a piece in the Cabinet report about planning, and there's a piece in the Cabinet report about all of the licenses. So to be clear, today is just an option agreement heavily conditioned for a land transfer under that process. Now, a lot of the questions today have been around, is the land declared surplus and how? Yes, the land has been declared surplus by the council for some time. But before I invite my colleague in, I've got Justin Kingdon with me today, who's my head of corporate landlord. Let me just give you a little bit of high level on what that means. We declare land surplus when we have no operational use for it, or no intended operational use for it, or it isn't in our business continuity plans. Now, the clay pits itself was acquired by our Highways Department back in 1977 for reclamation, and we've had no use of that land. We have no planned use of it, so it's been surplus, declared surplus for some time, Chair. Whereas the land at Bryn Menyn, it has an industrial use class designation, so it is technically part of the Bryn Menyn industrial estate, but it's never been brought forward. Now, back in 2018-19, Chair, we did look at whether we could bring that land forward for use, because at that time there were European funds available to look at light industrial units. So we did some feasibility, but unfortunately, because there's a 4-metre height difference between the Bryn Menyn site and that land, we'd have to do significant work on that land, costing well in excess of £1 million back in 2018. To level the land, get the road infrastructure in, and get all the services in that are required. And this was way outside the viability of the council at that time. So what is very clear is we did have an approach from, we were asked, did we have an approach from anybody for the land? We've had no businesses on that estate coming forward, ask us, can we have the land for business, industrial operational reasons? We did have an approach last October, we are responding to that currently, who had suggested that he could use the land. Could we discuss a potential offer? It was a tentative email suggesting that they could use it for conservation, possibly some enterprise units, community use. Now, the land is industrial use. We wouldn't countenance a use for conservation. I'm afraid we couldn't look at a use for community at that time as industrial. However, at that time, we were already discussing this land transfer with our colleagues because we had left the High Bond project in the September committee. We had the call in on the 2nd or 3rd of October, and then we had this approach. So I'm afraid we haven't been able to look at that offer. But I think what is very clear at this stage is that some of the uses that were proposed weren't appropriate for this land. So that hasn't gone any further. Plus, the amount of money that would be required to gain access into that land is in the millions. So that land is declared surplus, it is on our asset register for that. It has a nil value on our asset register. So both of those areas of land are surplus and we're comfortable with that. Now, the CCR have expressed an interest in both of those areas, and then we've come upon this options agreement. And as part of any project going forward, which we're not involved with now, Chair, they will be investing millions in getting a site into that land. They will put a road in, the infrastructure and everything that's required. But as a result of it, there may be up to 7 acres of land on that site at Bryn Menyn that will be available. So should businesses want to come forward in the future, if this planning goes ahead and if this project goes ahead, there will be a road into the area, the land will be flattened and it will be serviced. So there are up to 7 acres that we could start having conversations with businesses on that estate should they want to expand. So I think that's important. With regard to the clay pits itself, the only use really you could put on that land would be that solar array. However, there will be up to 20 acres of that land around the periphery still available after this process, should people be interested. Now, the local rugby club has had an interest previously in some of that land, but over the last couple of years, we've done a community asset transfer process with the rugby club, and they had an investment of £150,000 from the council to improve their facilities and their clubhouse. So we haven't had any further approaches from the rugby club for the clay pits land. However, there is land, 20 acres, outside of this project that we would be willing to discuss with them should they feel that would be appropriate, Chair. Now, what happens if the hydrogen project ceases? Well, as we've described, one of the conditions in the option report is that should, if anything, cease in the future, then that land will be offered back to us as BCBC, because the CCR will have this land on a long leasehold. It's still our land, it will be offered back to us at the value at which we paid for it. So if the project ceases, what we would inherit is a solar array on the clay pits, and then what we would inherit at Bryn Menyn is a serviced site that we haven't been able to bring to the market previously. It would be for CCR, as part of this option agreement, to remove any of the manufacturing materials that were on that site. What we would be left with is a serviced industrial plot, which I would say at this point, Chair, would be for the benefit of Bridgend. So hopefully that makes that one clear. And will the land be used for an operational purpose? Yes. We wouldn't exercise any option agreement. We wouldn't go through with that unless a planning permission is in place. And that planning describes the exact land use for both of those areas of land. So the option is very clear that it has to be for an intended purpose, and it won't be exercised unless the planning is in place. There was a question about the timing of this, and would this be detrimental to the planning committee? I don't think that would be detrimental at all, Chair. The planning committee must only determine this application on land use and nothing else, not on value, not on safety concerns, nothing other than the use of that land. Is the use of both of those areas of land appropriate for that area, regardless of the value of it, regardless of any concerns they have about operation and safety? Is that land use appropriate? Now, that planning committee is coming forward on the 29th of April, and this option agreement is conditional on a planning consent being granted. So it isn't premature. The option agreement sits there should planning be granted. It may or may not, Chair. If it's granted, then CCR have the opportunity to exercise that option if their business case is approved as well. So hopefully that'll make that clear. We are still going to agree a joint valuation for the land. It is circa £1 million. We haven't got to that stage yet where we know exactly, because that is a shared district valuation, agreed valuation. That money is not included in the budget that went through in council in February, March. This is on top of, this £1 million is additional. And in the Cabinet report, one of the conditions was that this money is afforded protection in the early years until we are certain this project will go ahead. So should the land be returned, the money will sit there for that. So I hope that answers the questions that I had written down, Chair, but happy to take anything further. Justin, is there anything further on the surplus land that you think would be beneficial for committee today?
Morning. For the benefit of the recording, I'm Justin Kingdon, Group Manager in the Corporate Landlord Directorate. I think the discussion on surplus land, as you've probably covered it all, Janine, other than to say a considerable amount of officer time was given to the Bryn Menyn site in 2018 to try and bring it forward for commercial development. At that time, there was no interest from any businesses in the locality. We were not aware of any businesses looking to expand. We were trying to bring Bryn Menyn land forward for speculative industrial development, which at the time proved unfeasible due to the enabling costs. And since that time, prior to that and since that time, there has been little, if any, interest expressed from any businesses in that area, other than interest recently expressed in October 2023. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much. Nobody else wants to come in? Any cabinet members or no? Okay, I will now invite members of the committee to ask any questions. I've got a few hands raised. The first one is Councillor Stephen Bledsoe, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Thank you to the Cabinet members and officers who've spoken on this already. When the notice of the call-in arrived, I went back and I watched well, first of all, I read the Cabinet papers that related to it, then I watched the Cabinet meeting, then I read the call-in, and I tried to put myself in a position of If I was in that meeting, if I was a member of the cabinet, and I'm sure many people are happy that at the moment I'm not, but if I was, what questions would I have asked? And I have a couple of questions I do want to ask this morning, but the most pressing one to me that stood out that I don't feel was asked. In the report, and it has been stated this morning, it states that this option agreement to declare this land as surplus and to be able to enter this agreement is based on the fact that this land will remain in public ownership or public body ownership of it. But also in the other part of the report, it states that the Cardiff Capital Regional deal is a 15% shareholder in the operation going forward. So by its very essence, 85% of this land will be owned by a public body. No, sorry, by a private company, apologies. So it's, to my mind, from what I've read, what I've heard and what I haven't heard answered, is that an operation will be happening at this location, which is 15% public owned, 85% privately owned. So how do we square that circle that the statement is that this option is done because the land remains in public ownership, please?
Okay, Janine, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Bledsoe. Just to be clear, the land option is only to CCR, and the land will remain in their ownership, in public sector ownership, and it won't transfer. And that is quite clear in any option agreement we do. It will stay in public ownership as part of the CCR. And actually, when the CCR becomes the CJC, the Corporate Joint Committee, in effect from the 1st of April, CCR are a regional body of government statutorily. So we will have Welsh Government, then the CJC, and then ourselves at BCBC. So the land will be held by regional government on a long leasehold. That won't transfer. Thank you.
So to be clear then, Janine, the land will be CCRJ, but whatever's on the land, they will rent off CC. How does that work? How does the people using the land, which is, I think, is the High Bond project, for example, how does that relationship work then?
Yeah, Chair, that is obviously a part of the business arrangement between Welsh Government, CCR, and the land user. And at that time, the land on Clay Pits and Bryn Menyn will stay in CJC ownership. Yeah. And I'm assuming it's a leaseback agreement for those people to use that land at that stage.
It's a sublease almost, and we long leasing it to Cardiff City region.
Yeah, the land is a long leasehold to the CJC, and then the CJC at that stage, as long as they abide by the planning conditions and everything that we've got in the option agreement, that is then for them, for their operation.
Okay. Yeah. Leader, did you indicate you were to come in then?
Yeah, and for the benefit of those members of the public that are listening, the Corporate Joint Committee is fully owned. It's 100% owned by the public sector. Hugh David, leader of Bregenta County Borough Council. The reason why I didn't ask that question is because I know that, and cabinet members know that, and it's obviously identified in the report that the transfer is to the Corporate Joint Committee, and cabinet members and members of the authority know about the Corporate Joint Committee. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. Councillor Freya Bledsoe, please. Oh, do you want to come back in, Councillor?
It was just for one point of clarity, if possible, Chair. The one thing to raise is that obviously the public aren't aware of those conversations. This is a call-in. There's members of the public. The public need to know this as well, which is why I would like questions to be asked in public meetings so the public can see the answers rather than just cabinet being aware of it. That's important to democracy. So I want to be crystal clear. If we sell this land to CCR, whatever they become,
CCR for now.
Yeah, CCR for now. They will own the land. They will own the building on it. They will lease the land to an operator, which is a joint company that they will be involved in. The only thing that concerned me, I understood everything. The corporate director used the word assume. We can't assume. Can we have clarity on something, please?
Yes, thank you, Councillor Bledsoe. What I can assure you is the land stays with CCR, who will become the Corporate Joint Committee. And this is a land deal with them. The reason I used assume is the business decision between the CJC and the operator. That is their operation. And I can ask that question, but I'm afraid what I can't do today is categorically tell you what that arrangement will be, because I'm afraid I don't know what that arrangement will be. That is between them. So I am assuming at this stage that it will be a lease-back arrangement with them. But the land, I know categorically, the land will remain in public sector ownership. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Frey-Bretso, please. You're a non-committee member. I'm allowing you to come in case anybody is wondering in the chamber.
I was just about to thank you, because it is at your discretion, but it's a point of clarity that I'm seeking on what's just been said. So we've just been told by the corporate director, and I think I heard it correctly, that we'd spent £1 million on Bryn Melyn already in order to bring it up to scratch. Is that correct, in 2018?
No, it's not that wasn't my understanding.
No.
What was said about that? Sorry, can you just clarify?
Yes, I can ask Justin to come in and clarify, Justin Kingdon, Councillor Betts. But no, we haven't spent any money. It was a feasibility to look, but I can pass you.
Oh no, sorry, no, sorry. I think that's my mistake for not clarifying. I think you said that we'd already spent £1 million on the whole estate to bring it up to scratch with roads, etc. I think that's what was said.
No, Councillor Bledsoe. Let me let
Okay.
Justin. No, that's yeah. Let me just get Justin to clarify, but that's not correct. No.
Yeah, just for clarity, Councillor Bledsoe, the £1 million was a figure that, whilst looking at feasibility options for the development land at Bryn Melyn, so this parcel of land, we undertook a number of feasibility options looking at how we could bring that site to the market, how we could make it operational, and that returned enabling costs in excess of £1 million. We didn't actually spend that £1 million at that point. That £1 million plus enabling package rendered the Enterprise Hubs project unviable and didn't proceed. So the money was never spent. We never ended up enabling that site at the time.
Okay, thank you for that.
Right, thank you. Cheers.
Thank you. Councillor Martin Williams, please.
Thank you, Chair. I've got quite a few questions, you can imagine. But if it suits the committee, what I would rather do is put them in order of the way that the call-in is written. So I'll ask to do with land use, and then I'll defer to other members and come back, if that's okay. I note with interest, and it wasn't in the call-in, but it's something that the cabinet member has said. He said something about return on investment, and he also talked about when the decision was made to withdraw from High Bond, that officers were then instructed to work with other partners to find a way of making this project continue without our contribution. That would seem to me to suggest that this mechanism isn't being used properly, because the motivation for using this mechanism is to transfer the land to CCRD, who will then transfer it through some sort of lease mechanism, we assume, to a commercial entity. So the motivation is not to dispose of surplus land. The motivation of using this is to further the project. Now, that may seem like the words of a pedant, and I make no mistake for that, but we have chosen to use this mechanism, and I think it's the use of the mechanism in this purpose that causes me and my colleagues great concern. With regard to the surplus, that's my first question, is the mechanism correct? And is the motivation and the purpose of using this mechanism correct? It may seem, so that's my first question. The second question on surplus land is...
Can I bring the director in to
answer
that?
Thank you, yes, Chair.
I'll bring you back in, because it's quite a complicated question, I thought, but perhaps Janine can answer it more easily than I could ever could.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Councillor Williams. I think when Councillor Howell Williams came on, I think there's been, dare I say, maybe some confusion between what his intention was to say and how you've interpreted it, if I'm honest with you. The Cabinet report in September 23 was for us to regrettably withdraw from that high bond project because of the cost of the due diligence going forward for the council And as you are aware, we're in incredibly financially challenging times, and it was in excess of £500,000 or more to complete that due diligence. So one of the recommendations at the end of the report was that we would continue, the Cabinet would withdraw, but that we would continue to have dialogue with colleagues at Welsh Government and CCR to see if we could find a way forward, so that we would continue to work with Welsh Government colleagues and the region to look for what we could do. We couldn't be a stakeholder, we couldn't be part of High Bont, but was there anything else we could do? And so as part of that, we had a conversation with CCR and Welsh Government, and this was when CCR came forward as a stakeholder and took Regen's lead in the project. Now, we did discuss this at the call-in in some detail in October, but that is what was the intention of that statement by Councillor Williams. So I think there's been maybe some slight confusion, but there is we cannot invest in the project, and that's what that September report was about. We've withdrawn, and the recommendation was the dialogue between the public sector bodies should continue, and it did, and it's resulted in this option agreement for the land to be transferred, subject to all those conditions that we've talked about a little earlier. So hopefully that's a bit clearer. Thank you.
Councillor Williams,
I got
how many questions you actually got? Because
I've got 3 questions, and I'm going to withdraw because it's about land use.
Okay.
And then I'll withdraw for that.
Okay.
I mean, that doesn't really answer my question, because my question was really the motivation for using this mechanism. This mechanism, I understand it, is about the disposal of surplus land. It's about the disposal of surplus land. So the motivation should be, we have surplus land, how do we dispose of it? But from what the directors just said and from what the Cabinet member just said, the motivation for using this mechanism is actually the furtherance of the hydrogen project. Now, again, it may seem highly pedantic, but I don't think that points to the land transfer mechanism not being used for its proper purpose. But I'll come back to my second question, which goes back to the definition of surplus land. Now, the officers talked to us about work that was carried out, as in, reviews that were carried out of Bryn Melyn in 2018, but that's 6 years ago. And the world has moved on since then. And I know, and officers will know, that our group leader submitted questions in trying to produce an alternative budget regarding all land holdings in the borough that we have, and what they could be used for, the value of them was, and so on and so forth. And this land wasn't even mentioned in that as surplus land. So what I would like to see, and what if I was on the Cabinet, and again, people may be very glad I'm not, is where is the register of land that we hold, and where is the definition of what's surplus and what's designated for a particular use? So where is that? And my third question, no, I'll leave it there. I'll leave it there for now, Chair. Thanks.
Just straight question, where is that?
Where is the register? Where is the document of all our land holdings? When was it last reviewed? And why wasn't that put to Cabinet to allow them to make their decision last week?
Okay.
Right, may I start answering that one, and then I'm going to hand over to my colleague. If we get back to the land transfer transaction protocol, that is put in place by Welsh Government, best practice to transfer land between public sector to public sector. So we were approached by the CRC, about this land, with the involvement of Welsh Government as well, to see whether we could use that transfer protocol to transfer the land between the two public sector bodies. We have taken legal advice on that, and we can use that protocol for those reasons. It's legitimised. That's the correct thing to do. That option agreement is conditional, and we've discussed that. So just to say that it is legally approved that we can use this protocol, and we were approached by the CRC for this particular area of land. Okay, so I'm going to hand over to Justin to talk about the surplus land register and all of the protocol, and there is a protocol that sits behind that one.
Thank you. Justin, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. The council do have a register of all land owned by the authority. That register is electronic. It's backed up by an electronic mapping system. All land owned by BCBC is on a register. We also have a register or list of properties of assets identified for immediate sale. That list is also held by BCBC and is fully accessible. But there is a difference. Not all land owned and not used by BCBC appears on the assets for immediate sale. And it's quite right and proper that certain sites, certainly where they have no immediate value or have significant enabling costs, will not appear on the register of land for sale. Bryn Menyn being one of them. Bryn Menyn, it isn't on the BCBC balance sheet, doesn't have a separate valuation. The valuation is considered below the threshold to have to be a registered asset, and on that basis, it doesn't appear as an asset registered for immediate sale. So there is a register. That register is available. It's backed up by mapping software, but there is a difference between land owned by BCBC and land identified as surplus by BCBC for immediate sale.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Laura Clark, please.
Thank you, Chair. I think these questions that I'm searching for clarity, really. Excuse me a minute. And I think that Janine has probably answered them, but just for my own clarity, Janine mentioned that an approach had been made for the land. But if that land was declared surplus, why or has it been offered to the open market? That's one question. And the other question for clarity is, if the land is handed back once it's been built on, can Janine just clarify what will happen to the building that's on that land? Thank you.
Thought you answered that, Janine, earlier, but do another go.
Yes, okay. Thank you, Councillor Clark. The reason why the land hasn't been offered to the open market is because we want to retain it in public ownership. For instance, if we did offer some of this land to the open market, it's quite likely that the operator who wants to operate the hydrogen plant would buy both areas of land at an inflated value. And that is not, I don't think that's in the best interests of the council and the public. We want to ensure that the land stays in public ownership, that we can control the use of the land, control what it's used for, and that if anything happens in the future, that land is returned to us at BCBC for the benefit of BCBC. So we haven't offered that land out to the market because for those reasons, really. I think I think that makes sense, doesn't it? That in fact, that hydrogen operator in particular had approached us a couple of years ago about buying that land. And at that point, we said, no, we want to retain it in public ownership, and rightly so. So there are some real strong reasons why it should retain on a long leasehold, and then we have that control that we need. And then with regard to the land being handed back, should that occur in the future, it's conditioned in that option agreement that it has to come back to us as BCBC, because we are the owner of the land. It's only on a long leasehold, and it comes back at the exact value of what it was transferred for. So in actual fact, Councillor Clark, if you imagine that there's a couple of million is spent on landscaping and getting into that land and putting the roads in and laying it out, what we would get back is a serviced plot with 7 acres available. At any eventuality, if there is anything on that plot, and I believe you're talking about the plot in Bryn Menyn as opposed to the clay pits. I mean, we would gladly take on a solar array at the clay pits. I don't think we'd want that removed. But the land of Bryn Menyn, what we would do then is we would ask CCR to remove anything that we didn't need, and that would be part of any option agreement, albeit a lot of what is going on to that site is land-based, is maybe some tanks and some cabins. But we would ask CCR to return that. So what we would return is a secure area of light, industrial land with serviced roads, etc. Something that we could then bring back to the market or determine what we wanted to do with it in the future. So hopefully that gives you some answers, because I think the important thing about the option agreement is we've protected every single avenue here for the council in that regard to make sure this land is protected and, if returned, is to the benefit of us. Thank you.
Thank you. Could I just come back, Chair, on that?
Yeah, go on.
So basically what you're saying, Janine, is that the deconstruction of any buildings on that land will be at the cost of the CCRD.
Yes, absolutely, Councillor Clark.
Okay, thank you.
Just to be clear, I believe, although I don't really want to get into the planning permission today, it's right that we don't. I do believe it's cabins which are portable. So I don't believe there's actually any physical construction of buildings. They are mostly modular and cabins. But yes, absolutely, clearing that site would be the responsibility of CCR should we need to have it back in the future. Thank you.
Before I bring Councillor Jenkins in, I'm going to ask a quick question, Janine. Is there going to be a contingency fund in this contract? Because companies have promised to put land back as it's supposed to be, or when, for example, the open cast in Leaders Ward, I believe it is, where there was all promises made what they were going to do with this land after the site was finished, and it never happened, and then they threatened to go bankrupt and all the other problems that they've had over there. What can we do to guarantee that there's money available if, say, High Bont were to pull out, or whatever company it is, that land's going to be cleared to hand it back to us in the, as you described earlier?
So the agreement that we have, Chair, is with the CCR.
Right.
Is with regional government. And what they plan to do is for them. So our agreement is with regional government.
Right. Gotcha. So
we would expect that land, should it ever be offered back to us, would come back with those things removed. So it's with regional government. Okay. So that's our land agreement. Yeah.
It's not with High Bont, so apologies. Okay. Councillor Jenkins, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Mainly for clarity, and most of the questions that concerns I had have been asked there, but I'd like to come back on the opening statement, obviously with a cabinet member there, who made reference to the call-in regarding purely and simply the cost implications of furthering the scheme, the High Bont scheme, and Bridgend County Borough Council's involvement in that scheme. I saw it as purely being on that. Yes, there were loose discussions on how to possibly further a High Bont scheme in the future, but that was just loosely based, and the decision only was based upon whether this council at that time was going to pursue, and with the costs involved, pursue the High Bont scheme further, and BC's involvement in it. It left me then feeling that other options would be made available for this land, and due process would take place. Councillor Williams had made the same statement now, is that due to the director came in and adequately shielded the shall I say, the cabinet member's statement and tried to clarify it, but it indicated to me that once that was decided, the BC's involvement directly would not be would not be directly involved in that. There was only one option that they were looking to take forward, and that was progression of a High Bont scheme. And that bothers me, because as far as I was aware, council had not decided that, although we weren't being directly involved in it, all options were to be taken into consideration and how to progress it. So that's my major concern here at the moment, that there seemed to be, by the indication of the cabinet member's statement, that the option to look at was the only one, which is a progression of a High Bont scheme. And the only way to do it was the way that's been progressed to us all at the moment. And I'm concerned about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jenkins. I'm not sure there's a question there anyway, but do you think...
Well, the question is really, has all options been explored?
Okay.
I said that's not been fully answered to me.
Is that directed to the cabinet member, did you say, Phil, or to the officer, to Janine? Anybody?
Well, to whoever is capable of answering it.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jenkins. I do love your questions. I think that the recommendation you're referring to in the September report, the first recommendation was that we now, Council BCBC, are no longer part of that project and that we withdrew as a stakeholder. Absolutely. The second recommendation of note is that Cabinet asked us to continue dialogue with Welsh Government and with the city region, because as you could imagine, Councillor Jenkins, the Welsh ministers and Welsh Government had lended their support to this. In fact, our new First Minister had met and we spoke to him before he was the First Minister about this project in particular. And they were asking us, they recognise that BCBC can no longer be part of it, but that we continue dialogue with the CCR and with Welsh Government. And that's what we have done. We continued the dialogue, not to be part of the project, because we can't financially be part of the project. And CCR had submitted, and there was a planning application in at that point for that plant. And then CCR approached us about using this land transfer transaction protocol for them to keep the land in public ownership. So that was legitimate. We had an approach from a public sector body to continue that. So I know we discussed this in that call-in on the 2nd of October last year. So I'm not sure if that gives you any more clarity, but those two recommendations are in the Cabinet report, and then we discussed them further at that call-in in October. So we can have had legal advice that we can use this transfer protocol. It's best practice to transfer land between public sector to public sector. That is an option agreement that is heavily caveated to ensure the protection. The land stays in public ownership. It only proceeds if a planning permission is granted, and that's if, and if a business case is approved and the money is available. So it's heavily conditioned. At this stage, it's just an option agreement, Councillor Jenkins. To be fair, there's a way to go here on this. So I'm not sure there's anything that I need to add further, Chair, so thank you.
Could I say, well, you have clarified that, so it is obviously in that dialogue and the way that you move forward, of course, on it, and I appreciate the work taken in it, but it's based purely upon progressing a hydrogen scheme in the future at this particular land. And I think, if I'm right, you've reiterated that. So you told me, and you cleared up the meeting at that particular time was based upon, and all your efforts have been directed towards progressing this and safeguarding the public ownership. Yeah, is that correct?
Councillor Jenkins.
Can I come back in, Chair? I mean, the people who are progressing this, Councillor Jenkins, to be clear, are not BCBC. People who are progressing and investing in this are Welsh Government and the city region working alongside Marubeni. Bridgend is not investing, and we're no longer involved in this. We have been approached by the regional government, to be the Corporate Joint Committee, CCR, to discuss whether we would consider an option agreement for transferring that land across. That's all. We are not part of Highbont. We withdrew from Highbont in September 23. So BCBC is not enabling that project, Councillor Jenkins. We withdrew. That project is between Welsh Government and CCR, and I'm afraid that was the subject of the last call-in and the September 23 Cabinet report.
Thank you. We've done that. That's the last call, and we're not discussing what's on the table today. I don't think that's been answered. There's something going on with the hands up. Justin Kingdon, you've got your hand up. The officer, then I bring Ian Williams in, who seems to have dropped to the bottom of the list. He was next. Yeah, so that's going to happen, Ian. So, Justin, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just to follow up on Councillor Jenkins's points there, you could take Highbont out of this equation when at the time BCBC instigated original discussions with Welsh Government about the hydrogen demonstrator. That was on the basis of us offering up sites that they could progress the scheme on. At that time, we invited Welsh Government or CCR to bring forward planning applications for that use. And those planning applications were live at September when BCBC decided not to be a partner in that project. Now, from a property perspective, it would not be right or proper or potentially ethically correct for the rug to be pulled from under the feet of that project and offer that land to sale for somebody else. And as an example, that could have been anyone. If we had invited a local business to submit planning application, and to submit planning application costs a considerable amount of money, if we had engaged in a local business to bring forward a scheme for whatever purpose, and then we exited, it would not be right for us to then sell that land whilst that project is live. So it's not that we're supporting the project, we're allowing Welsh Government to continue to explore this site as an opportunity for this project, as we would if it was anyone else. I think it's fair that we are not progressing the Highbont project. We're allowing Welsh Government to do their own work on this, and if the Land Transaction Protocol can then be used as a result, then so be it. But we wouldn't expect to sell sites from under anyone that had submitted the planning application that we were supporting of at the time. So the decision to remove ourselves from the project isn't a reason to exit or to almost sell the site from under the CCR's feet.
Okay.
So I like to be clear from your statement, Mr. Kingdom, as well, that we actually assume the planning application would have been approved for that development.
No, absolutely not. Councillor Jenkins, it's the whole thing is based on it's an option agreement pending and subject to planning. So absolutely not.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. Yeah, we progress. Thank you very much, anyway.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, could I have a point of clarity on something that the Corporate Director said, that the Cabinet Member for Finance, with his opening gambit, who spoke quite eloquently, didn't mean to say what he said. Could I just have that clarified?
Did he mean to say what he said?
That's what the Cabinet Member, that's what Janine said.
Janine? I'm not sure.
No, I don't believe that is what I said, Councillor Williams. I believe I said it's been misinterpreted what the Cabinet Member had said. Thanks.
Okay, thank you.
Misinterpretation.
I've got two questions, please. Okay. Cabinet said that the project couldn't take the project forward due to financial pressures of £525,000, which were deemed to be unaffordable at the time.
Right. Is that part of the call-in today now?
It's leading to a
that's leading on to another point, to a question.
Yeah. Does that mean that there will be no funds available for viament to any other future projects within this financial period? There are no funds available, because to me, £525,000 could have taken this project forward, and we could have been a part of it.
Right. I'm not sure if that's relevant to this call, and be honest, Councillor Williams. If Jean wants to answer it, let her answer it.
I'm afraid this was subject to the Cabinet report last September and the call-in last October. Councillor Williams, we're not part of that project. We've set a budget and we couldn't afford it. Thanks.
Okay, sorry. Councillor Martin Williams. Well, relevant to this call-in, are we in?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, fire away then.
Can I ask the Cabinet Member for Housing, Planning and Regeneration if he's aware of the public perception that BCBC pulled out of the Memorandum of Understanding because of pressure from this administration, who were acutely aware of the political fallout and outrage that this scheme was causing, and the financial pressures were just a smokescreen to pass the controversy over to the Cardiff Capital Region in order to say this had nothing to do with us but still get the project done.
Councillor Williams, it's not part of the call-in, but we can't ask you questions today, unfortunately. I'm going to raise legal as well in my ear. I'm sorry. Councillor Martin Williams, relevant to this call-in, Martin, please.
Always relevant, Chair.
Thank
Always
you.
relevant. I've got further questions, but that's further down the call-in, so I'm going to ask these questions and then I'll withdraw.
Yeah,
That's okay.
yeah.
First of all, again, not a question, but in response to something the officer said, I'm quite alarmed at what the officer just said about the fairness of selling the land from underneath the project. Really? When and I don't want to go back, but when the cabinet pulled out of this project, I don't think, unless I'm mistaken, because I'm not a mind reader, but I don't think that in making that decision, they tied themselves into this land having to be sold to an entity that would further the hydrogen project. And I'm not aware that when they made the decision last week, I watched it live actually, that there was any discussion that it would be unfair to not sell the land to CCR, who would then push it forward. So I am concerned about that, and I'd like a response to that. But I'll ask my questions, if you may. It is said that the land is valueless and has no value on our asset register, but the cabinet paper itself says there is a delta between the current value and the value post-planning. The current value in the cabinet paper is £250,000. Now, call me old-fashioned, but £250,000 is not nothing. £250,000 is a significant value. So you can't say on the one hand that it's valueless, and then on the other hand, the current value without planning is £250,000. So that's my first question: is could you explain that?
Right. Okay.
My second question is really to do with the third-party approach. And the name was named, I'm not going to name them, but a third party came in October and made an approach for this land, which was possibly, I don't know, possibly more than the £250,000 valuation. But again, it goes back to this whole fairness of selling to someone else and the rest of it. That wasn't put to Cabinet last week. Cabinet were unaware of this approach. So how can they have made an informed decision if they weren't aware of this approach? And on that point, the director refers to land use, and that was dismissed because it was not in line with the land use as defined in the LDP. But my understanding is that the hydrogen plant and the solar array are not in line with the land use. So where's the difference? I'm struggling with this.
So there's three questions. It was one point of clarity.
The first point was the point of clarity about the fairness. The second one was the valuation. How can you, on the one hand, you collectively say it has no value, but the paper says it's valued at £250,000? So that's the first question. The second is why wasn't the third-party approach put to Cabinet when they deliberated last week? Okay. And the third question is, well, the land use, if that wasn't in line with the land use, neither is this hydrogen scheme. So what's the difference? Okay. Thanks.
Justin, you ask for clarity first on the first point.
Yeah, and I take Councillor Williams' points on board. The reference to fairness was at the. It's a. Just to be clear, at the time we were instructed as officers to engage with the partners in the project, being Welsh Government and CCR, to look at whether there were alternative routes to bring this project forward. And my reference to fairness, I think fairness probably isn't the right word. The appropriateness of withdrawing the land from the project whilst furthering those discussions with Welsh Government at the time didn't seem appropriate. And then in respect of values, the values that we currently have, and there are two sites. So the Brinketh, we've got land at Brinketh which is not on the BCBC asset balance sheet, sorry, so has a value below 40,000, and the land at Bryn Cethyn, which does have a value. It has a value. It has an agricultural land value, and that's the combination of the de minimis value applied to Bryn Menyn being 40,000 or lower, plus the grazing value of the land at Bryn Cethyn. Bryn Cethyn arrives at the £250,000 current value, and we have had that valued by an independent firm of chartered surveyors, and those values are recorded as they are recorded every year as part of the BCBC asset revaluation process. So those valuations are undertaken every year.
Okay, thank you. There was two questions there. Yeah, Janine?
Yeah, I'll just pick up the third-party approach. The reason that hasn't been progressed is because it was a tentative approach at best. There wasn't a value in it. It came in October. It was for a land use that probably wasn't appropriate for the land. We will respond to that. But the most important thing is we want this land to be retained in public ownership. We're not bringing this land to the market for sale. Both of these areas of land are to be retained in public ownership as per this option agreement with those conditions. So we're not entertaining any third-party approach.
So the third-party approach was a private approach, was it? Yeah,
Was
it wasn't
a private,
board,
was a
public body, no.
Yeah, it was a 3-line email to Chair that asked could we consider whether we wanted to sell the land. It wasn't
So we're chatting on Chair being this.
in the public gallery. Sorry, Chair.
Can you keep your voice down in the gallery, please? It's disturbing some of the meeting here. Sorry. Thank you. Okay, so Janine, sorry.
Indeed, yes. So for a number of reasons, we haven't responded. We will respond to that third-party approach, but we want to retain this land in public ownership, Chair.
Just to be clear, this wasn't another public body that approached us, no?
No,
it was
a private individual.
And that doesn't fit in with your keeping it in the private realm comments, no?
Absolutely want to keep it in the public sector. And the other point as well, Chair, is the uses that were proposed, not all those uses we thought were appropriate.
Okay, thank
you.
So
thank you.
Leaders indicated to come in. Martin.
Thanks, Chair. So just to be clear that we have not had any other expressions of interest or bids from other public sector partners, and this is about a land transaction transfer protocol between public sector bodies.
That's what my understanding was, yeah. There was a third question. I can't remember what it was. I didn't write it down. Sorry? It's been answered, have it? Okay.
Yeah, I think the three have been answered. The value, Justin talked about the piece, about the fairness piece, and we've talked about the third-party approach. Thank you.
Okay. Okay.
Chair, could I just come back? I'm slightly confused about this third-party approach, and I think it's important so that we're all clear and that we're not subject to any future legal challenge, that we close these loose ends off. On the one hand, it's being said that there was it was a tentative approach, a three-line approach, a three-line approach. Yeah, so tentative with no detail. But about half an hour ago, there was some detail in that. It was said that this third-party approach was discussed landscaping, a nature reserve, and light industrial units. So that doesn't square with the three-line tentative approach. I'm struggling with that. And the other thing I'm struggling with is we didn't feel that land use was appropriate, but yet in the pre-meeting and up to now, land use has been a matter for DCC. So are we talking about land use today, or are we not? So I'm slightly confused there, Chair.
Okay.
Chair, I'm not sure we should be discussing this anyway, because this is about the land transfer protocol, and this is a matter that we will be picking up with that individual. So I'm not prepared to discuss that any further. And in the LDP, we have designated land, and this is designated as industrial land. So I am, as the director, entitled to deem that community use and/or conservation is not an industrial use of that land. Okay. There's nothing to do with the DC committee. They make decisions on detailed planning applications. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Councillor Stephen Bledsoe, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. The beauty of these committees is that you hear something 20 minutes ago that you want a question, and you have to wait your turn to be able to ask it. But hey, it is what it is, and we deal with that. So I did have a question, but there is a point of clarity on this. And I hope I've understood this correctly. I think it was stated that we've gone down the red book valuation route to enable us to be able to put a buyback clause or conditions on the purchase that would protect the authority in the future. Chair, when you came back in, you mentioned about decommissioning the site and all that kind of stuff. If that was stated, I don't believe that kind of buyback clause or conditions are exclusive to red book. You could put that condition on if you went to the open market. You could go to the open market and you could, as the seller, put any buyback condition or decommissioning clause into that, so we could in essence still go to the open market. My concern in what I've heard subsequently to that in relation to the fact that the word unfair was rightly or wrongly used, or however it was done, is that at that last call-in in the last cabinet meeting where it was decided that we wouldn't progress, that we have just made the decision that we are going to be dealing with CCR on this. And if they wish to deal with Marubeni, then that's up to them, but we want to keep it in public ownership. And I do still hold reservations over that statement that we want to keep it in public ownership, because I think on that basis, in relation to make this work on the way that we are selling it, is that is a agreement. In essence, if we sell this land to this person in this way, it will be used by a private company, 85% of it. Who owns it? Whatever the agreement is, we don't know at this moment in time what that agreement is, but it will be run by a private company for that purpose. So that concerns me in that. But my question that I wanted to come on to was, it states in the process, and this is in the call-in, it states in the process that this can't be used for speculative use. But everything that I've heard this morning has been speculation. I don't see the certainty around the process that we're going down. We can't sell this land in this way for any speculative use. But I haven't seen any kind of certainty around what's going on here. So by its very nature, we are dealing at the moment in speculation.
Can I just say, I thought the director answered the question, first point you made. It's already been answered. The 85% one.
Yeah. No. That was. I wasn't asking for clarity on that bit. Right. But what I'm saying is on that is that what it seems to me is that we're using a process and we're choosing what parts of it fit with that criteria in order to do it. That's what it's. And I can totally respect the corporate director disagreeing with me. I get that. That's just what I'm hearing and seeing sitting here, and that's my interpretation. And that's certainly not an accusation against anybody.
No.
But what I'm saying is.
So what is the question then? In all that, I'm slightly.
Yeah, no. I confuse myself.
Somewhere there, Steve.
I confuse myself sometimes, Chair. So I suppose what my two questions were is one. Hang on, let's go to the second one. Two. How are we getting rid of the speculative aspect in this? Because we can't sell this land in this way for speculative use. Now, everything that I've heard at the moment is speculation. Okay. So how are we sorting that? Yeah. And two, I do have concerns that we are using this way in order to fit something that we want to have done, rather than go into, that's what it was. If we went to the open market, and we open this up to more than just this one route, we can still put those clauses into the sales contract.
Right, okay. You're asking that question, can we do it? Right. Janine, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Rezzo. Speculation. This is not about speculation at all. This option report says very clearly, and in the Cabinet report, in section 3.11, one of the conditions is we would not proceed with this option agreement unless planning is granted, and the land can only be used for the intended purpose of that planning consent. So we would not exercise this option, as in sell the land. The option is there, but we will not be exercised unless that planning permission is in place. And in brutal truth, the CCR wouldn't want to purchase the land unless they have a planning permission that the land can be used. So there's no speculation here, in that we will ensure that that there is a planning consent in place. And if a planning consent is not in place, Councillor Bletso, then this land will not be transferred. Now, We have got, there are a number of things we've put in place. We will condition this option. We also need the CJC to give us a guarantee that the money is available, that they get their full business case approved at their meeting in June. And if they don't have the finance, the land deal won't go ahead. The land must be retained in public ownership. And that's our intention here because we have better control on it. So this is an option agreement and will only be exercised if those things come into place. And to be honest, probably the most important one is the money, and the second most important one is there's planning in place. Could we put clauses on an open market sale? Yes, of course, we could look to do that going forward. But in all honesty, if we brought this site to the market, then we do know who would want to purchase it. And we do know who probably would have the deepest pockets. And that is the people who want to develop the hydrogen
Very quickly,
scheme.
I want to bring
Yeah,
Councillor
and
Pratt.
for the
protection of the public purse and for the protection of the land and for the protection of the use of the land in the future, we wanted to stay in public ownership. Thank you.
Very quickly.
Yeah, of course, and I totally respect. But in our interest then, as the local authority, is it not better to get people with deep pockets arguing and paying more for the land?
No, because that isn't what this is about. This is about retaining control of the future use of that land for the best interests of that industrial estate and us as a county borough. Yeah.
I'm going to have one more question before the break because it's coming up past 11 here, and we've agreed that only 1 hour 30 minutes we take a break. So, Councillor Pratt, you're the lucky guy. Could you want to come in, please?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, no, the times worked out quite well because I did put my hand up and think I'm going to come up with some erroneous question, but previous questions has worked out quite well. Yes, we could put the land to the open market, and by all means, completely legitimate route forward. The local authority would get a large payment, and it would be my view that we lose complete control of that land and would have very little say in what goes on there other than natural resources, Wales, planning enforcement, these sort of things. Is it the realistic case that using this protocol that the local authority will have a passive control over all of this? And I'm sure legally it's a lot more complicated, but if the local authority doesn't like what's happening on the land that they lease, they will basically just tear up the lease agreement and I'll have my land back. I'm sure I'm not a lawyer. I'm sure it is a lot more complicated than just tearing up a piece of paper. But in essence, we have control of this land. If we don't like what's happening on this land, either by another public body or a private contractor, that we have the control of it and we can cancel agreements. If we go to private ownership and we put clauses in, basically we'd be arguing in court over those clauses, and those with the biggest pockets in civil court tend to win.
Right.
So would I be right in saying that using this allows a level of control, and that is probably a preferential view? Thank you, Chair.
Janine, is that for you or for the legal officer? Or?
Yes, I think the short answer is yes, Councillor Pratt, and that is why we want it's all about control of the use of the land in the future and what it could be used for, the planning, etc. And of course, retaining that land in public ownership gives us that ability.
Could you, as Councillor Pratt put it, tear up the contract because you're not happy what's going on there? Would that be an option, or would it be a bit more complicated than that, I would have thought?
No, I think it'd be a bit more complicated than that because it would be a long leasehold and we'd probably have to buy them out of that. But it does, bearing in mind now this is a regional government who will have control of the land. So it does give us far more control. And of course they have their own code of conduct and they're going to act in the best interests as well.
They'd also be watching what's going on this land now.
Absolutely. That's a critical part of retaining it in public ownership. But, you know, because we do, I mean, I think it's for the best interest, and that's why we've made this decision. Thank you.
Okay, it's now 11:29, just come up for 11. I'm going to call a quick 10-minute break now, as we've been instructed previously. We'll stop the recording at this point, please, Meryl. And I'll see you back at 22:12. Okay, thank you. Don't log out.